I assume the computer's yours. Good?
Yeah. As long as you're able to move in.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Can we start preparing to settle down? We'd like to start. We are 5 minutes into the 12th hour. So those who are still entering, please try and find your seats as quick as possible. Can everyone be kindly reminded to put their phones on silent? And Monday, after the passing of the Honorable Nomzamo Madikizela Mandela, there's no way that we can respond in that manner. Malibongwe! Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, as my former Vice Chancellor would say, comrades and compatriots, welcome to this dialogue today. Thank you very much for taking your time from all the other commitments you may have had today to join us in this discussion. I think I'd like to begin by greeting those whom I find to be very important, the most important to this institution, and those are its students. I want to then greet those who educate the students, the academic staff of the university, followed by greeting its leadership, the management of the university led by the acting Vice Chancellor, Professor Tawana Kupe. I would then like to greet the team that has brought Reverend Jesse Jackson to South Africa, Chris, Andile, and Matthew, and everyone else that you're working with. And most importantly, let me greet our panelists, Imbokodo, Ukothandwayo, Ngqobaka. How do you say Ngqobaka? There we go. Did I say it right? Thank you. Ukothandwayo, Ngqobaka, who's representing the Student Representative Council. I would then like to greet Professor Gilbert, who is representing the Institute on American Studies by African students. I would then like to represent the most honorable guest today, Reverend Jesse Jackson, who has come all the way from the United States to be part of the send-off of Nomzamo Madikizela Mandela. Can you please all join me in giving him a round welcome? I'm sure it's not foreign to you, the ululations that you're hearing within the crowd. That is how we welcome and greet and celebrate the presence of somebody in South Africa. To start off the program, I would like to introduce the acting Vice Chancellor of the University, Professor Tawana Kupe. For those of you who don't know Professor Tawana Kupe, he was appointed the Vice Chancellor of the University of the Witwatersrand with effect from July the 1st in 2017. In this capacity, he is responsible for the daily running of the university and the coordination of operations across all executive portfolios. Professor Cooper served as the Executive Dean of the Wits Faculty of Humanities for 6 years between January 2007 and December 2016. His background is in literary and media studies, and he's well-known newspaper and magazine, and he is a well-known newspaper and magazine columnist and commentator on issues related to the media in the broadcast and online spheres. He has edited a book titled Broadcasting Policy Practice in Africa. He serves on numerous university committees. He has an extensive managerial experience, distinct leadership qualities, and the ability to engage with diverse groups of people. Combined with other strengths, he is part of an executive team of a leading academic institution to advance society, social justice, and human rights, and to study and shape the future of the media in Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome to the podium Professor Tawana Kupe.
Thank you very much, Program Director Udo Mkacha. When you were a student here, we knew you were Udo, although your full name is nonviolent Mkacha. The one reason why I'm also thanking Udo is not just because she's Program Director here. We would all not be sitting here today if Udo did not bring this event to the university. So there is no pretense here by management that they brought this event to the university. event was brought by Udo, we immediately accepted for a number of reasons. First, I think that Udo in her own right was an activist when she was a student. And today we're receiving an honoring and will be addressed by an icon of the civil rights struggle, Reverend Jesse Jackson. I'll welcome him in a short while. Second, Udo was not only just an activist, she became a student leader in the university. She's the former president of the SRC, one of the few that were women. Typically, our SRC presidents have been men. And third, I think that Udo has kept her links with the university and knows how to bring such events to the university. We, of course, also have, as you know, launched at the beginning of this year an African Center to study the United States as a nation and as a society. And therefore, it was appropriate that this event is also hosted by the university and this newly created center. The reason being very simple. The presence of the icon of the civil rights movement, Reverend Jesse Jackson here, has to do with some of the core issues the center will study. But a core issue that both African Americans and others who believe in freedom, democracy, and civil rights in the United States have been in solidarity over for many centuries. He came primarily for the funeral of Umamweni Madikizela Mandela, because there's a long history of solidarity between struggles in South Africa, struggles on the continent, and the struggles of the people in the United States, in particular, but not exclusively, African Americans. So allow me to say the following: welcome to all of you, and a special welcome to you, icon of the civil rights struggle, Reverend Jesse Jackson. You will notice, ladies and gentlemen, I'm saying icon of the civil rights movement, Reverend Jesse Jackson. I'm not saying American civil rights, because his contribution to the civil rights struggle transcends America and he has attained global stage. Greatly honored as this university that in your very first stage, having come for one thing, you could actually pay in a couple of hours to come to this very university. As you know, Winnie Madikizela Mandela is a graduate of this university. Nelson Mandela also did at Grace's University. And the university in its own right has produced generations of civil rights actors and people who are sitting in the civil rights place. George Bezos was one of the lawyers for Nelson Mandela. Still is at the Legal Resources Center, working day and night to ensure that civil rights, justice, social justice, democracy continues post-1994. So ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to end it there. This is a short welcome so that we catch time and we go with those that are actually going to give a substantive input. Again, thank you very much to you, Odo. Thank you very much to you, Reverend Jesse Jackson. We're delighted you are here. We're greatly honored. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Professor Tawana Kupe. Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who don't know, this university being one of those universities that sets trends in our country, has recently opened the African Center for the Study of the United States. So just as Professor Tawana puts it, the US, institutions in the US continue to study the African continent. It is just as important for us to also study them from the perspective of African students. So from the African Center for the Study of the United States, I'd like to bring to the podium Director of the African Center for the Study of the US, Professor Gilbert Kadiagala.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies. I'm very happy to welcome Reverend Jesse Jackson here. I first met him in May 1988 when I was a PhD student at the Johns Hopkins University, and he was giving a keynote address. So I was just reminding him this morning that we've come a long way. In 1988, there were no cell phones, and therefore there were no selfies. This morning I had an opportunity, therefore, to take take advantage of his presence here to take us out. Reverend Jackson, I'm glad to see you again in my new incarnation as the Director of the African Center for the Study of the U.S. I think as Professor Tawana Kupe has mentioned, the center is supposed to, in fact, advance African-centered knowledge about the U.S. It is supposed to engage Africans in the understanding of the U.S. as a nation and a society. So it's very critical that you are here gracing us with your presence, because one of the key components of the center will be, in fact, to do big comparisons between the U.S. and Africa. And civil rights movement is a very core element of that comparison. So I'm very glad that you are here today to give us your insights into how Africa, or how South Africa, is linked to the broader civil rights movement globally. It's also a very unique moment. April 4th is the anniversary of the assassination of Martin Luther King. So it's one of the biggest icons of the civil rights movement. So you are here at a very unique moment as we celebrate that. And again, we're celebrating another big moment as we just had April 14th, the burial of Winnie Madikizela Mandela. So the April 4th, 1968, May 1988 when I met you, and April 2018 are momentous events therefore for us and for you. So we welcome you again to talk to us about these big comparisons that are very important to the center as we move forward. But they are also important to the university. And therefore, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to welcome you again and hope that we're going to have an interesting dialogue on these very momentous events. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Kadiagala. Reverend Jackson, these students who are American students at the University of the Witwatersrand would like for me to make it very clear to you that they are present here to listen to you. So, ladies and gentlemen, let us acknowledge the presence of American students who are studying at the University of the Witwatersrand. And staff members who are also at the University of the Witwatersrand. Reverend Jackson, you see, you may be familiar to the fact that it is often young people who are the starters of revolutions. It is often young people who question the status quo and provoke the current systems. And that has been the truth at Wits University. When I arrived in 2012 at the university, and prior to my presence at the university, young people have always led on issues that affect the community at large within the institution and surrounding the institution. And I think that it is not possible that there can be any discussion around issues of society without the inclusion of young people. If we want to speak about intersectionality, breaking the barriers of ageism, of race, of class, of gender, of sex, it is important for us to be inclusive in our various dialogues. And therefore, I would like to bring to the platform, to Presidium, to the podium. You see, it shows that I am in various spaces. In our corporate space, we say Presidium. Yeah, well, so now I'm trying to figure out in this space, what do I call it? I'll call it a platform or a podium. I'd like to bring to the podium a very strong youth activist, Imbogodo in her truth sense, someone who is questioning the status quo and who is representing us as young people in the Student Representative Council of the Wits University, the SLC Treasurer General, Ms. Othandwayo Oboka. Viva! Viva the undying spirit of Sobukwe, viva! Viva! Viva the undying spirit of Silumiko, viva! Viva! Viva the undying spirit of women in the struggle, viva! Viva! Firstly, I'd like to welcome you all to our university. Rev, I'd like to welcome you to this university. A space that is dynamic, a space that is full of contradictions that we are constantly trying to solve, and a place of struggle. When I first heard of the establishment of a research center for the study of the United States, I thought, what a peculiar establishment. What would be the purpose of an establishment like this one? Be serving the southernmost tip of Africa. And then I began to dive into the concept further. I realized that this was probably one of the more brilliant ideas to come out of the university in a while. I see it firstly as an opportunity to work within our own epistemologies and frameworks of analysis in order to develop new ideas and concepts of how we as Africans view the world that we live in. And particularly how we view a state that has come to become a powerhouse, a global powerhouse. Secondly, I see it as an opportunity to connect the histories and the lived experiences of the African diaspora in the United States and the African Black lived experience here on the continent, and more so South Africa. As an opportunity to observe the patterns of resistance and revolution by Black people, both in these states, to analyze what has come to be the domination of the white settler in both the US and in South Africa, and to trace the interconnectedness of systems that come to make the society, or both these societies, what they are today. This is to say that both these countries, over the centuries, have come to be characterized by colonialism, slavery, racism, capitalism, patriarchy, and heteronormativity, and I could go on. But now we arrive to the topic at hand, right? Looking at the similarities of civil rights matters in America and South Africa. Black people in the world have for centuries now been what Fanon refers to the wretched of the earth. Since the dawn of the age of discoveries, where Europeans explored as they liked different parts of the world, driven by mercantilism and capitalism expansion, there's been an active project of the subjugation of the other. We see this in the establishment of the transatlantic slave trade, in which millions of Africans were dispossessed from their land, stolen, and shipped across the sea to work the plantations in the Americas. We see it in the early 16th, late 16th, early 17th century, with the colonization of Southern Africa and the rest of the continent through land disposition, central despotism, and the creation of labor systems that sought to cement the economic relationship of the colony and the mother country. All this was justified through a meticulous process of naturalizing the idea of race as biological fact, through what they would call, or come to call, scientific racism. But out of these processes, resistance is born, revolution. And to refer to the topic, the fight for civil rights. We see this early in the resistance of the native people to colonization on the continent. We see it in the slave revolts in the US, particularly the Haitian Revolution. And perhaps it is this fight for freedom and civil rights, as it were, that has come to connect the American diaspora to that of the continent. And that is why Rev Jackson and his experience can be connected to experience of Black people in Southern Africa or in Africa. The United States was built on the blood of the native people and was built off the backs of the slaves who worked the plantations. It was built off a system of racial segregation and oppression. Similarly, South Africa, as we know it, was built off the backs of Black people through an intense migrant labor system, and was also built off a system of racial segregation and oppression. What would come to be known famously, I guess, in the later years as apartheid. Surely then there would be similarities in how resistance manifests itself in both of these states.
enslaved revolts, later the civil rights movement, the Black Power movement, and the long fight against apartheid in South Africa, which saw a varied type of resistance, from passive in the early years to more active, radical, and violent resistance. There's similarity here because the modus operandi of both South Africa and the United States at the time was built off racism. And these movements sought to fight for the emancipation of the oppressed and the right to vote. Of course, some dynamics may differ. Potato, patata. Like the population of those who are oppressed and the oppressors, the feelings of displacement. I mean, imagine being shipped off onto a ship and thinking you are going just for a couple of, I don't know, hours or days and spend the rest of your life in a different continent. The nature of resistance, the development of the state and democracy, there's no doubt that the American state has been far more developed than that in South Africa. For the negative or the positive, it's for other people to judge. But the fact still remains that we find two sets of societies, both fighting a system that is against their very being, and both using similar methods of resistance and ideologies. Today, however, I was invited to perhaps elaborate from a student perspective. Firstly, it is important to highlight that the youth has been a driving force and agents of social change historically across the world. One sees this here in South Africa with the birth of the Black Consciousness movement, which was a movement sprouting out of the university space in the 1970s. Similarly, the youth of 1976 fought against apartheid as a medium of obstruction, would also go on to spark the last push against the resistance of apartheid. We see these patterns in the Arab Spring and in the Black Power movement in the US. Secondly, it is important to highlight the role that young people have played in civil rights matters, both in South Africa and in the United States. And this resistance has come to be continued today. In South Africa, young people particularly, and specifically in the university, have sparked a national discourse with regards to decoloniality, questions of land, feminism, capitalism, homophobia. They have actively sought out to interrogate the current state of the nation and whether or not it has truly liberated our people. We saw this in the Fees Must Fall movement, Roads Must Fall, and End Outsourcing. Similarly, young movements like the economic freedom fighters have challenged notions of freedom and change in the current democratic dispensation. These are all young people. The sudden wave of questioning doesn't come out of nowhere. It comes from the death of a nationalist dream. In the 1970s, post the decolonization processes, Abu Nkrumah and all of those people hit a point in which we started to realize that the nationalist dream of a new birth, of a new nation, was slowly dying. We became rudely awakened from this dream. Perhaps, as Fanon knows, there is no straight road to nationalism. Writers, artists, and the people in the post-independence period are faced with major challenges in that the dream has now become a nightmare. There exists multiple realities, multiple temporalities, and multiple visions. There is no longer one clear solution towards emancipation. The colonial reality becomes a multiple one, and the idea of the collective disintegrates in the post-colonial period. And some are stuck in the past that wouldn't pass. A sort of durational time in which there's no difference between now and then, especially when we've experienced violence. More importantly, we do not experience the same realities, temporalities, and visions. We are not a homogeneous people. The motif of this period is then characterized by death. Young writers who are born in the post-independent period know no other reality than the nightmare in which they are living in, they are drowning in. This gives birth to theories known as Afro-pessimism, nihilism, black radical feminism. The vision, and temporalities of these writers is not what's wrong. It is the conditions in which they are writing in that are wrong. The point here is that all over Africa, the post-independence period is riddled by poverty, landlessness, exploitation. And of course, there are those whose sudden rise in the period and are afforded a certain point of privilege who experience temporal amnesia. We have entered a period of neo-colonialism. More than ever, we must realize the complexities that exist in Black life and not seem to oversimplify the matter. In the US, young people have sparked the Black Lives Matter movement, in which they directly challenged racial brutality at the hands of the police. There's been a movement to end racism in universities as well, and there's been a large wave of feminist movement. The point here is that the work of resistance, both in South Africa and America, has to continue. It's a must. This is because despite the fighting spirit of our ancestors and those who came before us, these two states are still both, and perhaps the world as well, are still characterized by racism, patriarchy, and other forms of oppression. So for us young warriors in Africa and the diaspora, the struggle continues. A luta continua. Amanda.
You see, Reverend Jackson, I was not lying to you when I said young people are leading this institution. You heard it for yourself. Her own words are testament to my words. Ladies and gentlemen, let us get straight to the point of why we are where we are today. And that is to listen to the words of Reverend Jesse Jackson. And I'm sure we can all agree that he needs no introduction. But out of respect, we will introduce him. Reverend Jesse Jackson is the founder and president of Rainbow Push Coalition. He is one of America's foremost civil rights religious and political figures. Over the past 40 years, he has played a pivotal role in virtually every movement for empowerment, peace, civil rights, gender equality, and economic and social justice. On August 9, 2000, President Bill Clinton awarded Reverend Jesse Jackson the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the nation's highest civilian honor. Rev Jackson has been called the conscience of the nation and the great unifier, challenging America to be inclusive and to establish just and humane priorities for the benefit of all. He is known for bringing people together on common ground across lines of race, culture, class, gender, and belief. He graduated from North Carolina A.T. State University in 1964. He worked full-time in the civil rights movement with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He received his earned Master of Divinity degree from Chicago Theological Seminary in 2000. For his work in human and civil rights and nonviolent social change, Reverend Jackson has received more than 40 honorary doctorate degrees. Wow. In April 2010, he was awarded an honorary doctorate from the University of KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa, right on our home ground. In October 1997, Reverend Jackson was appointed by President Bill Clinton and Secretary of the State Madeleine Albright as Special Envoy of the President and Secretary of the State for the Promotion of Democracy in Africa. Reverend Jackson traveled to several countries on the African continent and met with such national leaders as President Nelson Mandela of the Republic of South Africa. Reverend Jackson began his activism as a student in the summer of 1960. In December of 1970, Reverend Jackson founded Operation Push, which is People United to Serve Humanity in Chicago. The goals of Operation Push were economic empowerment and expanding educational, business, and employment opportunities for the disadvantaged people of color. In 1984, Reverend Jackson founded the National Rainbow Coalition on Social Justice, a social justice organization based in Washington, D.C., devoted to political empowerment, education, and changing public policy. In September of 1996, the Rainbow Coalition and Operation Push merged to form the Rainbow Push Coalition to continue the work of both organizations to maximize resources. Long before national health care, a war on drugs, direct peace negotiations between Palestinians and Israelis, ending apartheid in South Africa and advancing democracy in Haiti became accepted public policy positions, Reverend Jesse Jackson advocated for them. Reverend Jackson's advocacy on these and other issues helped bring the American public to a new level of consciousness. Reverend Jackson's 2 presidential campaigns broke new ground in the United States politics. His clear progressive agenda and his ability to build an unprecedented coalition inspired millions to join the political process. Some of you may have seen a video where President Obama is inaugurated and Reverend Jackson is present and is very emotional about the emergence of President Obama. And for me, as a young person, what that meant for me, I'm sorry I'm diverging from this, but I think it's very close to me, is that as we leave, as those who have led, it is very important for us to look back and bring those that we left on campus, that we've left in the youth struggle, that we've left wherever, and bring them up along and ensure in their victory and their success as well. It is important for us to break the intergenerational gap. And it is through legends and the doings of Reverend Jackson that we can also learn to continue in that manner. In 1991, Reverend Jackson was elected Senator of Washington, D.C. He has continued to be a leading advocate for a variety of public issues. As a highly respected and trusted world leader, Reverend Jackson has acted many times as an international diplomat in sensitive issues. He's been in Syria, Cuba, Iraq, Kosovo, and many other spaces. On November the 2nd, 1985, Reverend Jackson joined with Oliver Tambo and others at the strong demonstration in London's Trafalgar Square to protest apartheid in South Africa, and also for the call of the release of Nelson Mandela. Post-democracy, Reverend Jackson has remained no stranger to South Africa. He has remained no stranger to the African continent. And it is through him being no stranger to our country that he came and was part of the send-off of Mamnumzana Madikizela Mandela. And we thank you for that, Reverend Jackson. And we take note from your international solidarity. And it highlights that it's important for us as Black people across the world, across the globe, not to act in isolation, because at the end of the day, our issues remain the same. Our color unites us through all our struggles. And having said that, ladies and gentlemen, please assist me in giving a very warm South African, Betsy, everything welcome to Reverend Jackson.
I was first arrested at age 19 trying to use a public library on the apartheid in Greenville, South Carolina. So I most was the young people. Dr. King led the struggle in Montgomery. He was 26 years old. He was really a young people. When Oliver Tambo and Nelson Mandela began the Youth League of the African National Congress in 46, they were young people. So some point all of us were young people. How do we just sit here just for a month. You raised so many issues and concerns today. Because the South African and the African American relationship is so parallel. We must learn from each other's stages of development. Next year, we will have been in America for 400 years, 2019. From 1619 to 1863, 244 years, we were in legal slavery. We were the basis of trade, of wealth. We brought to America labor and shipping and resources from Africa for 244 years. Lincoln did the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863 because they were about to lose the war to the South, who was trying to connect with Britain and France on the cotton industry, which we were the foundation of. And when the African Americans were freed and joined the Union Army, they defeated the South and therefore saved the Union and ended slavery. Well, 2 years later, we were given the Emancipation, the Constitution, which was a little more conservative than the Emancipation Proclamation, 13th Amendment. And then, of course, 1954, the legal end of apartheid. I would make this case to try to build these parallels. One, we were not just taken into slavery, we were also traded and sold and traded. It was taken and traded. The narrative is too simple. We were just taken, we were also taken and traded. That was someone whose values did not mind selling us as a people, and that is true then, is true today. The 4 stages of our struggle on the state side. First stage was to end legal slavery. If I were writing a set, then there are 4 parts, 4 stages, 4 movements. One stage is to end legal slavery. Nothing mattered except to end legal slavery. During that season, it was illegal to learn to read or write. Even though our people were whitened in the face of that season, it was never never one in line with a rape, because you can't rape your commodity. Our skin colors reflect the politics of that season. 244 years is a long time to be subject to rape without charge and killing without charge or without consequence. The slave master had the right to beat and or kill the man, to rape or violate the woman. Only he could be charged, but people called teaching one was to read or write. Even then, they knew the strong minds break strong chains. During that season of slavery, toward the end of it, there was something called the American independence movement from Britain. And the biggest debate was our status. We found the term it was 3/5 of the human being by law. And that continued. And then there was the Declaration of Independence after the Constitution was written. In that, we was considered 3/5 of the human being. That lasted for another almost 80 years. The Answer Douglas around 1852 gave us a speech about the 4th of July, about American independence. He said, I can't give it because I'm a fugitive from slavery. They may take me back. And 5 years later, Dred Scott escaped a plantation. It was called Pull Back. And so you have no rights. White is bound respect by the Supreme Court of the United States of America in 1857. Of course, in 1862 was the season that the South was growing in strength on the North. And Lincoln set us free to join the Union to throw out the balance of power. And so the first stage was to end legal slavery. The only thing that mattered was to end slavery. At that time, I might add, the British and French anti-slavery forces were marching to end slavery in America and in parts of Africa. The second stage for us was legal apartheid, or segregation, the extension of slavery. With who were slave masters. And then, of course, by the selling us out in the 1777 decision, for another 80 years we've been apart. 5,000 blacks were lynched without an indictment. Most African Americans went north as refugees. It was not immigration as we know it, free immigration. It was went north as refugees. We were in our phase under the law of legal segregation. The third stage was the right to vote. In 1965, the right to vote, which is under attack today. The fourth stage, say beyond slavery. Repeat, say beyond slavery. Beyond slavery. Beyond apartheid. Beyond the right to vote. Fourth stage, access to capital, industry, technology, and deal flow. And our struggle on the state side today, we are in the fourth stage. We are out of slavery, out of legal segregation. We have the right to vote. We have an African American president, but when it comes to access to capital and technology and deal flow as a stage that has not yet been cultivated. Well, look at the four stages basically here in South Africa. The slave trade. The 1948 apartheid decision here under British captivity was borrowed from the 1896 decision in America. So America and South Africa have had this kinship down to the USA has meant USA. And so during the early 1910, 11, I was in South Africa studying in America at Yale. And they were inspired by Booker Washington's sense of developing some education for blacks. And they came back to South Africa and formed Fort Hare. And that kinship developed across those years. We were, if you look at African Americans and South Africans, vis-a-vis looking at Congolese or looking at Rwandans or looking at Kenya, we look the most alike because we come out of the same situation relative to the oppressor and the level of exploitation of our people as a race. We speak the same language. Our struggles are parallel. We were in slavery during the same period. We were in segregation during the same period. When Dr. King came to Ghana in 1957 and Kruger became the head of state, he and Ralph, a bunch of others, referred to South Africa in his address at that time and how despicable that system was here at that time. We're keenly aware as we develop slavery, apartheid, right to vote, and now access to capital. So here we are today, in another stage of our struggle. What must you do? First, you must know what time it is. Your actions are not new. You are joining a struggle that has deep roots. I think the worst possible thing they did to us in our struggle was they erased our memory and separated us from each other. They erased our memory. When I was a bit younger, I read Sister Day here, who's a theologian. You read the first book of Matthew. It's a bit confusing, the first chapter, because it's all genealogy. And I would read begat. And I was looking for some words to have some preaching about. But from David to Jesus is 1,000 years. They maintain continuity, 1,000 years of continuity. And Jesus spoke of Moses quite eloquently in his addresses. Moses was 2,000 years older than David, so he spoke of 3,000 years of unbroken history, a sense of the struggles of their peoples. His first sermon was a direct quote, an attribution from Isaiah 700 years before. So the breaking of us up from one another and erasing our memories, but in fact in our learning each other anew. And that's part of our challenge. What must we do? First of all, if we're going to be in the struggle for the long run, I think about Mandela and Tambo in 46. One of the exiles went to jail, both struggling. Both of them were learned men. Both were lawyers. Both made choices. You can't teach what you don't know. You can't lead where you don't go. There are certain values within that must drive you to be a long distance runner. First, you must not self-destruct to alcohol and drugs and that which will blow your mind. You must not self-destruct to be a long distance runner. A hit and a high, it may be short-term pleasure, it's long-term pain. You cannot be a long-distance struggler if you self-destruct. You cannot make it if you self-degrade. It's one thing to be told that you are inferior, it's another thing to internalize it. You must not self-degrade. You must not self-degrade. We must call ourselves niggers and despicable names because we've learned the lesson well. That we accept the whites as superior and it will not go away ourselves inferior. So we simply call our women names and we will not call our mothers and our sisters and our daughters because we've been taught to set this. So nobody wants to be a long distance runner, must self-destruct through drugs, must not self-degrade the inferior complex, must believe the strong minds break strong chains, be willing to suffer and sacrifice for a principle higher than pleasure. Don't self-destruct, don't self-degrade, develop your mind, and suffer and sacrifice for a principle higher than private pleasure. Those who make the most impact took those principles seriously. Think about Winnie Mandela, who has been a victim of the most degrading dimensions of the system as a leader, and put her in perspective. Will we do it today because we can embrace her as a martyr? We degraded her as a martyr. We love martyrs. Martyrs don't challenge us. Martyrs disturb our comfort zone. Martyrs comfort the disturbed. Say martyrs comfort the disturbed and disturb the comfortable. Martyrs disturb the comfortable and comfort the disturbed. Martyrs disturb us. So we try to marginalize martyrs. Now when they become martyrs, when they're dead and worn out, then we can quote them and make up our speeches. And so when Dr. King was a marcher, the FBI was able to get from the Department of Justice the right to tap his home phone, his office phone, and his hotel rooms, and pay maids money to see if there was semen on the sheets. This ought to disrupt his credit and destroy him as a martyr, as a martyr. There's a statue in cities around the country and a statue on the mall in Washington. So we love martyrs. We love martyrs. Martyrs give us a comfort zone. Martyrs threaten us. Well, let's look at when I was here in 1979, I got in the country some kind of way under French International South African Council churches. And I was naive enough to think I could ease into the country. see my friends. Are you here to visit churches? Are you here to see for myself? I know that South Africa and South Carolina was the same. Well, what about our politics? I said, well, I was cornered. I said, well, I believe it. Human rights for all human beings. You measure human rights by 1 yardstick. That's it. He's mad at me. Human rights for all human beings. Measure human rights by 1 yardstick was enough to upset the system in 1979. Say that how they passed poetry today, but in 1979, it left the status here in South Africa. The thing that I think that struck me the most while I was here, I was trying to reach one at the time. She was banished. She came up because she sent me a note. I went to a place called Crossroads, not far from Soweto. It was raining. I was coming to Africa in July, so I came in all my short sleeve clothes. July in South Africa. We almost froze to death. And it was raining that night, and they had a cardboard on a tree, resisting Afrikaner, teaching children the native language and teaching them English. And they were writing with their fingers alphabets in the mud. And gentlemen singing "Do Toya Toya," then write some more. You know, the spirit that is so strong for education. They were writing letters in the mud and sitting on benches that they made under the tree with a billboard on the tree. Cannot be contained. That's sitting in my mind. Just the will of people in South Africa to be free at that time. At that time, Nelson Mandela was hardly known on the state side. I am back here, Susu. Somewhere in the country's tumbled with a low profile in Zambia, across the country, keeping the organization together. And Becky was studying in school. Several of them was with the trade union Kasatu down in Port Elizabeth. But there was one in this room today, we're totally dark. One light would challenge all the darkness. That light was Winnie Mandela. We did not know. We knew Nelson was alive because we knew Mandela was alive because we didn't see him for 27 years. We didn't hear him. That was the heart. That was the Mandela heart beating. But it was Winnie's heartbeat. She was the banished one. She was the exiled. She was the discredited. She was the lied on. She was when you had these forces around the country, around Europe and America, preparing for the day when they could come back home. The light in darkness was winning. We must never appreciate the role she played. At one point, she was in jail for a year and a half in solitary confinement. So, a big hand for Winnie Mandela. Lastly, the most important thing is that there's a kind of tension today in the air about the stage we're in today. You who are free today to express yourself publicly, free to be television anchors and writers and producers and the like, don't demean those who fought to end to abolish slavery. That was their season. The deal to abolish slavery was they had done their job. Those who are now fighting for this stage, don't put those down who fought to end apartheid. Say, our struggle was not to get free alone. Our struggle was to get free, to get equal. Freedom was not our goal. Freedom was the need we had to acquire to fight for equality. Today we're free, but not equal. This is your day. same stage in America today, it's parallel, the same stage. Say today, there are no more foreigners. No more foreigners. With Google, Facebook, Twitter, television, internet, airplanes. There are no more foreigners. We're all next door neighbors. No more foreigners. To that extent, you're out of the Dutch slavery. You're out of apartheid. You have the right to vote. You don't have access to capital. Industry, technology. I could be speaking today in Washington, D.C. and be saying the same thing. African Americans today do not own a single downtown building we built in any major city in America. Neither do you. We're just arriving at that stage. We've had, in each stage, had its own set of heroes and heroes who made great contributions to that stage. So today, the anxiety over 4% of Africans own the land, and 4% of whites own the land. So Africans need land reform today. Today, we're free. We can vote. Have our president. Have our politicians. But today, we're not equal. I met a woman who was the head of the Maritime Trade Association down in Durban. She said, I'm over all the shipping yards. We don't have one ship in the harbor. Politically, so politics, follow me, so politics is a layer of our struggle. When I was here in 79, most blacks I saw walking down the street walking their heads down. Because they were intimidated. They couldn't walk around at night. They were a little toy at home. Today, South Africa, black South Africa, does not control banks, mass media, insurance, pensions, ships, international trade, construction, agriculture, engineering, technology, science. Now, that's your stage. Many of our freedom allies are not our equality allies. There are those who today are embarrassed by blacks. If you want Robert's Island, they'd be embarrassed by it. So 24 years, time to wake up, that's 24 years after democracy, blacks are freer, whites are richer. And we, the blacks, are freer, whites are richer.
Why?
No more sanctions. No more limited access to capital development. So you are freer. You won the battle in political apartheid. Today we're fighting economic apartheid. The political apartheid. Political apartheid was horizontal. We couldn't use the same toilets. We couldn't stay in the same neighborhoods. We couldn't stay in the same neighborhoods. We were so horizontal. Apartheid kept us separated. Now, vertical apartheid creates disparities. So fewer and fewer have more and more and more and more have less and less. Then you have the next question, then how do we form a new movement? It took international relations to end political apartheid. It was not just what you did within the country. People around the world part that type of movement. We went to jail every day for a year in Washington, every day for a year, trying to chase the South African embassy out of Washington. And finally one day, because it becomes such a big public issue, the Congressional Black Caucus went to the Congress and said the Congress must declare sanctions on South Africa. And they were so afraid to do it or not do it until they declared a voice vote for the U.S. Congress to declare sanctions on South Africa. That was the beginning of the end. So African Americans in their struggle in apartheid in South Africa, having experienced apartheid in America, led the drive to get the American government to end apartheid in South Africa. In other words, I looked at them, they bombed in Syria about the nerve gas, which is a terrible thing, but they didn't really bomb South Africa about Sharpeville massacre, but that didn't bother them. When Chris Haney was killed, they looked trying to kill Chris. So South Africa, and Britain, and France, and America were allies and the backbone of South Africa. Today they're allies militarily and economically. In other words, racial segregation embarrasses America today. Racial segregation embarrasses South Africa today. We've learned to live with economic apartheid. So in your studies today, you must know something about the amount of pension funds in the country. We must know how much pension funds there are in the country and where they're being invested. We sold the airport Oliver Tambo's name. Who controls the airplanes and the aeronautical space industry? Talk to me, somebody. Pretty soon they're going to have Winnie's name on the airport in Cape Town. But who controls the ships in the port? So we cannot settle the names and symbolism. We want our share of car dealerships, agriculture, land, banking, and trade. Thank you very much. Conversation, I want to make sure we're on the same page. Okay? Yeah, absolutely.
I think that deserves a standing ovation, ladies and gentlemen. the generation that bestows so much wisdom that we need in order to learn lessons that will help us moving into the future and to understand who we are. So for you to be standing here right now is a great honor to us.
Can anybody get you Tory?
Yes. Can we lead our revolutionary songs if there are young people in the room?
Viva
forget the spirit of our ancestors. Let's keep on dancing. Let nothing break our spirit. Come on, Lord! Don't live that way, Mandela. Don't live Nelson Mandela. Come on, Lord! Keep hope alive.
We'll now take questions from the audience.
Okay, we'll take a couple of questions.
Okay. Can we please take it in batches of 2, and when time no longer allows, then we'll cut the questions, but I will indicate when it doesn't. Can we please take into cognizance issues of intersectionality? If you know what I mean by that. Can I have my first 2 hands? The gentleman over here with the basketball t-shirt, I think, and then can I have another hand? Very important. The lady in brown on the far, my right. Okay, first 2.
Okay, thank you very much, Program Director. My name is Nico Dumagude. I come from Orange Group, Ward 73. I'm a member of the ANC and the ANC is in good standing. Thank you very much. I'm an activist. I'm a young person who's passionate about, finding justice for the people. I just have a few questions to ask Honorable Reverend Jackson. Well, during the campaign of the former U.S. President, Mr. Barack Obama, I've heard or I've seen in the media like views that you were of a view that Barack Obama did not represent the true reflections of African American people in America or blacks in America because he did not have blood of the slave. And I just want to understand maybe like in terms of that, this is not a disrespect, it's just that it's an honor for me to have you like this and be able to ask you a question. Thank you very much. And then, if you can please maybe clarify that if you really believe that Barack Obama did not present the true reflections of Africans in America because of maybe he does not have blood of the slave. Because my view is that all black people are the same. So thank you very much.
Thanks, leadership.
All black people are not the same. Some of us put on slave ships and some people profit from the slave ship trade. With determined oath by our values. Our skin color is a big factor. It's also our values that's a big factor as well. What's important to us? Some people ran out of the country, some people went to the province island. Different ones must be different dudes, okay? I think we had a good president, a solid one. Matter of fact, I voted him 10 times, the state senator, U.S. senator, the president twice. But we deal in a difference. We are an ethnic minority in America. You are an ethnic majority in South Africa. That puts you in a very different position. And therefore, some things have our spirit is in common, but you are a majority, treated like a minority. And your mentality is like a minority. You adjust to being a minority. See, we must not adjust to being a minority because we are a majority. Some African American minority act like we're majority, act like we're in charge. And so now, in this, let's say, minute about freedom of our lives, it's hard to find white people who would be for a Shopwood massacre or for Robert Locker with the Rwanda trial. They'd be for your freedom. But when you say our share of car dealerships, our share of banks, our share of media ownership, our share of land ownership, that's a different set of allies. Say effort. Excellence. Hard work. Means a lot. Inheritance. Access. Means more. One day in 1992, we were not free. So one day, we're not free. The next day, we're free. But nothing changed in our bank account. At some point, there must be some repair for damage done. You were held back. See, other people got privilege, but we got pain. See, share the privilege, share the pain. Next. Yes, ma'am.
Good day, Reverend Jackson. How are you?
Very well.
One of the greatest days of my life embracing you, and I'm just so privileged to be here at Wits University where I came to school. And I lectured a long time ago. I'm 35 now, and I own an advertising agency. And I employ 15 of our people because of the sacrifices of everyone that came before me. Now, my question is really because you hold a unique position, being a political as well as a religious leader. I get asked this question all the time, and the question is the role Christianity still plays for us as Black people when it was used as a tool to colonize us, to divide us, to oppress us. Why do we still believe in their God? And this is a question that came up just with my team on Friday. And I tried somehow to address this question, also knowing that here's Mama Winnie who's just left us. And she took a lot of solace in that same God and in that same religion. So my question to you, having this really unique role where, you know, we sat here probably in tears because of just how much you connect us from the struggle to segregation to apartheid to today with economic struggle being a current burden. I'm just wondering, you who hold this really unique position, having to answer for religion, especially Christianity, and having to answer for what it's done to us, and to maybe give us a sense of what your view is, because clearly this is something still so important to you.
My religion makes me political. My politics don't make me religious. My religion makes me feed the hungry. My religion makes me care for people in Soweto, though I live in Chicago. My religion makes me care for people in Haiti, though I live in Chicago. My religion makes me universal. My religion makes me set the captive free. So my religion makes me political. My politics don't make me religious. Now, certain whites have misappropriated religion. Jesus was born poor, under a Delaware, under Roman occupation, had to escape from Bethlehem to Egypt, to hide, to avoid genocide. There was a debate about who his daddy was. He came back, found his religion, misappropriated, and kicked tables over in the temple. Now, what I'm trying to say is that our religion has been misappropriated. You can't reconcile with Christianity and slavery. Jesus was born under occupation. Born under a death warrant. Went to Egypt as an immigrant or refugee. We have the same experience. He was born to debate about who his daddy was. Was it the Holy Spirit or was it Joseph? Joseph wasn't him, and that was the debate about it. Many of us have been born in the same cloud, right? Right? And he believed, and what he believed in humanity. He died for people who he didn't even know. So when they gained strength from her suffering, by her stripes, we're healed. By her stripes, we're healed. Suffering breeds character. Character breeds faith. faith will prevail. Christianity didn't oppress us. Racists oppressed us and misappropriated religion to do it. Many of our brothers and sisters profited from our being sold. Let's back up one more time. So there was a slave trade. Some traded us. There was some captive and some traded. Now that disturbed the narrative because it made life is not as simple as just those who got it. It's like white folk can run 1,000 miles up in the Congo and take some blacks out and take them to America. But they were brought to the seashore by slave stations sent by kings. It's corruption. By whatever color, it's corruption. We'll say sin is deeper than skin. Skin matters. Sin is abomination. Skin is a virtue. It must not be a religion.
Yeah.
Skin is a virtue. It must not be a religion. Some people who in this color turn her in to set up. So I said, I love my color. I will not be blinded by it. I will judge my wife and my friends by their character and by their behavior. So I know people of all colors and all sizes who cannot be trusted, and some who can be. Does that make sense to you? Say color matters. For example, you were speaking out to Mr. about what our people want to do. Some students paying no attention whatsoever. They say they want their degree, want them a job, want them to accomplish something, and they black. Some white people will be with you based upon their convictions. And I'm sad to say that I remember when Nelson first came out of jail, he went to Libya. So why you go to Gaddafi? It's because he was my friend. Why don't you go to London? I said, because I have friends in London. Why don't you go to America? I have friends there. So we are universal beings. We must not limit ourselves to one color on one side of town. We belong to one big tent. Many languages, one message. Many languages, one message. Love matters. Hope matters. Faith matters. Love you guys.
Our time allows us to take 2 more questions, and I'm going to do that thing of balancing again. Can we put them down and put them up again? Sorry, guys.
Okay, the gentleman with the Tosa, yes, and then I see one lady there. Okay, I see. Okay, so you took a picture with him, so.
Over there, yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Reverend Jackson, and thank you, Program Director, for recognizing me. My name is Christopher William Basher. I'm a student at Wits University. I'm the Postgraduate Association Chairperson, as well as a member of the African National Congress in good standing. My question, Reverend Jackson, because I know that we don't have a lot of time, is based on my experience as a young African who comes from a mixed background. My father was South African, my mother was Zambian, and they met in exile and came back to South Africa. And in my minimal experience, being somebody who grew up in an environment that was very black conscious and very Afrocentric, I believe that my generation lacks the understanding, or dare I name it, black consciousness and Pan-Africanism, based on the society that we live in, the education system, the political system, and so on. So based on the fact that we think how we think, and we live in a world that is where racism is so institutionalized that black people need to act whiter for them to actually get opportunities. For us to speak in English already is an abomination to be speaking in English in an African country. You know, so based on that knowledge, I just want to know what you believe would be a way for us to reach and conscientize young people who are yet to be in a political, in university space where they're exposed to politics, exposed to these sorts of ideas. How do we reach the younger people and conscientize them to appreciate their blackness and appreciate the fact that they're African? Thank you.
This is almost strange to me. You say you're mixed heritage. Your father's South African, your mother's Zambian. Now see, that's almost strange to me. They're just African. But it's interesting that people can manipulate race. Kenneth Combs played the big price, went to jail, suffered sacrifice, and was the father of modern Zambia. But his enemies wouldn't take him out. They said, but you founded the country, but your mother's of another tribe. They took him out based on manipulated race. The guy who had been in power for 27 years in Zambia, the father of the country was Kenneth Combs. And his opposition said, but you're not total Zambia. Y'all get the manipulation? Side judge, my brother, and my sister. Put it this way. Jesus said, somebody asked, who is my neighbor? He said, well, I'll give you a parable. So one day a man was walking down the street, tending to his business. Two thieves robbed him, beat him, left him to die. And while he was laying there dying, bleeding, looking for someone of his own religion, he went to the other side of the street and kept walking. He said, is that my neighbor? So another guy of his own ethnic group, the Levite, so he went to the other side and kept walking. So another guy, a Samaritan, different country, different culture, different religion, different skin color, helped him up. Who is my brother? Based not just on how somebody looked like me, but how they behave. See, at the end of the day, behavior matters, and character matters. We don't diminish our skin color, but don't make a religion of it. It's bad religion. Another thing, what is our objective? We want equal protection. For example, why we should put on the soccer field? When Britain plays Germany, and Germany plays South Africa, and you pull it, and the stadium's all full of people, and you got all these different races of people. So what makes soccer? What makes soccer? Exciting. What makes it? Multiracial. You choose uniform color. What was the South rather have? The white South African make the gold of my country, and the black German. So whenever the playing field is even, and the rules are public, and the goals are clear, and the referee is fair, and the score is transparent, we can make it. That's true on athletic, that's not true on minded. We cannot settle for a rich soil and poor people any longer. So South Africa is too rich to have some of the poor people. We want an even playing field in the mines. We want to share ownership of the mines. Last one.
Last question, please.
Hi, Reverend Jackson. Thank you very much for your presence here and your presentation today. Just to carry on your metaphor, maybe I want to ask you a question about the shape of the soccer field, right? Because you've always been a great supporter of inclusion and representation and reconciliation. But I think South Africa is the starkest example of how that doesn't end oppression and how it can actually subtly ingrain the foundations of racism in a way that we begin to oppress ourselves. So maybe the exact question is, do we really want to own industry? Do we want to be in charge of the banks, etc.? When the very rationale of those institutions is racism, is oppression, is exploitation. So do we want to sit at the table of our own oppression?
Please say it again, but I want to follow you, please.
I mean, maybe just the simplest way to say what I'm saying is that capital must oppress, right? Capitalism must be oppressive to work. So do we really want to be included into a system of oppression, or do we want to have the social imagination to change the shape of the field? Because the rules can never be fair in a capitalist society. We can own industry, but still there must be workers who are exploited to make them profitable. So how far do we take the imagining of black emancipation past institutions of, for instance, black Americans are not politically free if their choice is Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump, right? So how do we get past the politics of inclusion, the politics of survival, to a politics of true emancipation?
Racism and capitalism is a bad deal. Racism and socialism is a bad deal. Racism and communism is a bad deal. Racism and the Bible is bad religion. Racism and anything is just messy, just wrong. And so don't confuse a given economics. Right now, I'm concerned that South Africa focused on. We've democratized politics, but it's not democracy. We've democratized, so we have democratized our politics. We have not democratized our economy. There must be a fairer distribution of the resources of this country. There must be a fairer distribution of resources of the country. And what concerns me about the soccer, I thought you were going, in America there are 32 football teams, all owned by whites. So we are on we're 85 on the field, but 0% in ownership. So we've gone from picking cotton balls to picking footballs. They control the process. So in South Africa, who owns the soccer team? Who owns the soccer team? That's who's playing, that's who owns the team. You remember? I'm excited about it. Can I come back again sometime? Love you guys, I'm going around here.
Thank you very much, Reverend Jackson. But before you leave the stage, I'd like to call up Professor Tawana Kupe to hand over a token of our appreciation and our gratitude to you.
Well, he's coming. I spoke to a group of young African-American entrepreneurs last night, and they're well-educated and they're business folks. They've forgotten how to do the African tribal dance. So we must never forget the songs and dances of our tradition. Please don't give that up. I'm looking for some cooperage.
Just a quick announcement. Anyone who's lost a Samsung 5, which is black, please come and fetch it by DG over here on my left. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much to the team that has brought, or that has been managing. Can I please have your last two minutes, 1 minute, just 1 minute. was. Thank you very much. I think I'll start within the university. Thank you very much to Reshma and her team that helped us in putting this together. Personally, Matthew, thank you very much for reaching out to me to coordinate this event with the university. Matthew, please wave at everyone. Like, stand up and wave at everyone. Reshma, please wave at everyone. Like, stand up and wave. To your team, Matthew, Chris, Ms. Andile, thank you very much. To the university, Professor Tawana Kupe, thank you very much for allowing it to happen. To the students that might have skipped a tutorial, thank you very much, even though this is to your benefit. To everyone who's missed out on a meeting or whatever, thank you very much for coming. Let us take the food for thought that we have received today and see how we can make progress, whichever causes we are progressing in our various sectors. Long live the spirit of Mandela Mandela, long live. Thank you very much.
Raimi? How are you? I'm good. You disappeared to taxi. You don't come back, eh? You don't even respond to my emails. I sent you an email,
The story is short. I'm no longer at tax.
Seriously? What are you?
I'm going to be advisor for one. Come back here.
Wait, yeah.
Advisor.
Wait.